You have probably met someone like this. He lights up a room with a wild grin, speaks of startups that will revolutionize an industry, shows sketches for a novel he never finishes. His mind sprints ahead of reality, leaving a trail of half-packed suitcases and forgotten promises. Each setback is blamed on a destiny's bad timing or other people's short-sightedness. "The market isn't ready," he murmurs, sliding the latest blueprint back into a folder that will gather dust with the others. Sometimes he is an old schoolmate you still follow on social media, forever uploading mood board photos of the next chapter. Sometimes he is a partner who sweeps you into big weekend plans and then cancels on Saturday morning. Sometimes he's a father who shouldered out of adolescence decades ago, but keeps circling the same runway, convinced that the real takeoff is only a season away. Carl Jung gave a name to this undercurrent inside the male psyche. Puer, aeternus, the eternal youth. Modern pop psychology often calls the same pattern Peter Pan syndrome, a label that captures how an adult can remain emotionally stuck in perpetual adolescence. It is not a hobby or a bad habit. It is an archetypal pattern that whispers, "Stay airborne, never land." At first glance, the pattern looks charming. The puer is inventive, intuitive, quick to imagine possibilities that others miss. But the same force that feeds his creativity also pulls him away from gravity. To land would mean accepting friction, deadlines, compromise, and the possibility of failure. The eternally young man treats ordinary structure the way a migratory bird treats winter, something to escape before it hardens around him. Work contracts feel like cages. Long-term relationships feel like shorelines that take the wind out of his sails. He searches for the perfect context, perfect collaborator, perfect idea, a perfect moment, while the imperfect present drifts by unused. Anyone who has tried to help him knows the slow exhaustion of cheering from the sidelines year after year. You lend books, introduce contacts, rewrite CVs, hold space for late-night confessionals. Each time you think the switch has flipped, the old pattern reappears. A missed interview, a ghosted therapist, another declaration that next month everything changes. Eventually, you wonder whether your presence is fuel for the fantasy, a safety net that softens every fall. The tragedy is not laziness. Most puers work hard at avoidance. They rehearse scenarios, perfect excuses, collect inspirational quotes. The labor happens in the head instead of the world, so nothing tangible grows. And when reality contradicts their ideals, they retreat into blame. The economy, their upbringing, the pedestrian mindset of everyone else. Recognizing the pure outside us is easy. The harder task is spotting the micro-escapes within. The course we never finish, the side hustle that lives in planning, the conversation with a partner we postpone until the atmosphere feels perfect. Jung reminded us that archetypes are mirrors first and diagnoses second. If the eternal youth disturbs us, it is because he reflects a part of ourselves, still hoping someone else will guarantee our potential. With that mirror held steady, let's step into the shadowed half of the tale, the moment when bright possibility curdles into quiet destruction. The turning point often arrives quietly. A missed rent payment here, a friend's wedding gift forgotten there, a partner's birthday handled with a last-minute text. At first, these slips feel harmless, eccentric proof that the pure is not like everyone else. Over time, though, they weave a pattern. Commitments become suggestions, promises become metaphors, and the people who once applauded his spontaneity start to pay the hidden costs of chaos. Watch how the story unfolds in daily life. A creative brief lands on his desk. Monday. By Wednesday, he has reimagined the entire project, posted concept sketches online, and charmed the team with a rousing speech about breaking the mold. Friday's deadline arrives, but the draft is unfinished. He's already enthralled by a fresher idea he sketched on a cafe napkin that morning. Colleagues cover for him, clients extend timelines, yet frustration smolders beneath polite smiles. The brilliance that dazzled at the brainstorm now feels like a storm that never brings rain. Romantic partners experience a parallel arc. In the early weeks, he texts poems at midnight, plans surprise picnics, promises road trips with no destination but wonder itself. Months later, those gestures thin out. He forgets to call when he is running late, brushes off serious conversations with jokes, disappears for a weekend to clear his head. Each return is accompanied by an apology so heartfelt it almost erases the worry, until the cycle repeats. Love becomes a tide of exhilaration and disappointment, eroding trust grain by grain. What fuels the spiral is not malice, but avoidance. To choose one path means relinquishing all others, and the pure finds that grief unbearable. So he flits between possibilities, harvesting the early thrill of each and abandoning the work required to see anything through. He calls this behavior freedom, yet freedom without responsibility is weightless. It drifts, never lands, never plants, never harvests. Jung warned that when roots are feared, branches cannot bear fruit. Self-sabotage creeps in through subtler doors as well. Health appointments postponed because doctors overreact. Savings plans delayed because money will come once the big idea hits. Apologies that end with a gentle pivot. You know I'm just wired differently. So the onus slowly shifts onto whoever expects reliability. Friends who question the pattern are labeled unsupportive. Partners who ask for clarity are deemed needy. Employers who enforce deadlines are dismissed as bureaucrats. The pure stack stories that keep accountability at arm's length. If you have ever stood close to someone caught in this pattern, you know the silent burden. You edit their resume at midnight, front the utility bill, reassure mutual friends that he's really trying this time. You feel both protector and accomplice, aware that your help cushions every fall. Compassion morphs into fatigue, and still you hesitate to withdraw, because withdrawal might trigger collapse, and who wants that weight on their conscience? Behind the scenes, another force often sustains the cycle. The overextended caregiver, Jung's devouring mother in symbolic form. Sometimes she's an actual parent who still folds her grown son's laundry. Sometimes she's a partner who handles rent, grocery, paperwork, telling herself it's only temporary. Sometimes she's a network of indulgent friends who admire his genius too much to let bills or boundaries interrupt it. Each means well, yet their protection allows the eternal youth to postpone his encounter with reality. He learns that crises vanish when he waits long enough. Someone else always intervenes. Remove that buffer, and the archetype panics. Anxiety surges, rationalizations multiply, and a darker narrative appears. The world is rigged. People are ungrateful. Creativity is wasted on a planet that worships conformity. Blame keeps the ego afloat while dodging the deeper truth. That growth requires discomfort, that wings strengthen by pushing against resistance, that adulthood is less about surrendering dreams than about anchoring them in soil where they can actually bloom. It is tempting to diagnose and move on, yet the story is not finished. The same fire that burns bridges can, if redirected, forge steel. Within the pure lies vivid imagination, intuitive intelligence, an almost prophetic sense of what could be. The task is not to extinguish that energy, but to give it structure, turn spark into hearth, gust into sail. Doing so involves dismantling the fantasy of effortless arrival and embracing the slow disciplines that transform talent into contribution. In our next section, we will trace the hidden contract between the puer and his symbolic caregivers, then outline the precise moment when the scales tip from support to suffocation. Understanding that edge is crucial for anyone who wishes to help without enabling, or who recognizes traces of the eternal youth within themselves and longs to step, at last, onto solid ground. Look closely at the intersection between the eternal youth and the people who shelter him. On the surface, their care looks generous. Underneath it can become a contract neither side fully understands. He offers charm, novelty, and the promise of eventual greatness. They supply resources, emotional labor, and a buffer against consequences. Each receives something that feels necessary, yet both remain stuck at the same developmental checkpoint. Consider the parent who still phones the university registrar, arguing for deadline extensions her adult son could have negotiated himself. Every rescue confirms his hidden belief that authority will bend if he waits. Or think of the partner who lends rent money just this once for the 4th month running. She tells herself compassion is love, but a quiet resentment spreads because she's paying both halves of the price for his freedom. Why do these caregivers comply? Sometimes it is genuine affection, sometimes pride in his potential, sometimes fear of what collapse might look like. Often it is their own unexamined pattern at work. The need to feel indispensable, virtuous, or in control. Jung noted that archetypes rarely travel alone. They constellate. Where the puer appears, the devouring mother or rescuing lover is often close by, completing the psychic circuit. The shift toward growth begins when any link in that circuit fractures. A landlord enforces the lease. A friend stops rewriting excuses. A parent says, "I love you," and the next step is yours. Such moments can feel brutal, and yet they deliver the first taste of authentic agency. Without friction, will cannot strengthen. Without consequence, intention never hardens into action. If you recognize yourself in the caregiver's role, the essential move is not cold abandonment, but calibrated boundaries. Replace silent fixes with transparent terms. "I'm willing to help draft your job application," then the submission is on you. "I can lend the deposit once if you create a budget and show me how you'll manage next month." These boundaries shift support from cushioning to catalyzing. They spotlight reality without extinguishing hope. For the puer himself, 3 stages mark the path out of mid-air suspension. 1. Acknowledgement of time. He must feel, not merely know, that life is already happening. Someday is not a storage locker. It decays like everything else. Journaling concrete dates, missed anniversaries, stalled projects, debts left unpaid, helps convert vague regret into measurable evidence. Only facts break the spell of perpetual potential. 2nd, voluntary contraction. To grow roots, he must narrow focus. Choose one project, one skill, one promise to honor for 90 consecutive days. Freedom shrinks, but depth expands. During this contraction, the fear of missing out spikes. Treat it as proof the exercise matters. 3rd, public accountability. Secrets sustain delay. Sharing targets with a mentor, therapist, or peer group locks intention into the social world, where falling short becomes visible. Visibility feels risky, yet risk is the currency of maturation. Throughout these stages, the childlike spark need not be smothered. Reserve time each week for playful ideation, travel sketches, improvise music, whatever renews imagination. Then funnel that energy back into the chosen commitment. The boy survives, but under stewardship of the adult. Relapses will happen. The first missed deadline after a month of progress can trigger a reflex to abandon everything and chase novelty again. In that moment, the critical practice is pausing without quitting. Name the stumble, repair the breach swiftly, resume the plan. Discipline grows not from flawless execution, but from shorter recovery cycles. When boundaries hold and practices accumulate, a subtle alchemy begins. The eternal postponement loosens. Gratification from finished work starts to eclipse the thrill of initial brainstorming. Relationships move from roller coaster highs to steady warmth. Freedom feels different. Less like drifting cloud, more like a well-built boat that can cross oceans precisely because it has hull and keel. This is the cusp where potential becomes contribution, yet one element still waits in the wings. Grief. Leaving the imagined life behind involves mourning what could have been. That grief, if ignored, will sabotage progress from beneath. If faced, it becomes compost for new growth. In our final section, we'll walk through that grieving ritual, then outline a sustainable architecture for adult freedom, how to retain creativity, honor commitments, and inspire others without slipping back into the orbit of endless beginnings. Grief is the gatekeeper of maturity. The puer mourns not only old fantasies, but the very sensation of limitlessness that made life feel enchanted. Sit with that sorrow deliberately. Write a farewell letter to the versions of yourself who almost built a company, almost moved abroad, almost loved without fear. Read it aloud, then burn or bury the page. A small ritual, yet it signals the psyche that the season has turned and the soil is ready for planting. With space cleared, choose foundations instead of fireworks. 1. Daily anchors. Begin each morning by naming one realistic objective that can be finished before dusk. Completion, however modest, rewires reward circuits long ruled by novelty. Evening reflection. 5 sentences on what worked and what faltered. Closes the loop and prepares the mind for tomorrow's anchor. Second, rhythmic work and rest. Adopt a cadence. 45 minutes of focused effort, 15 of unstructured drift. The first trains endurance, the second honors the child within. Over weeks, the pendulum settles into a productive hum where imagination feeds execution rather than undermining it. 3. Visible ledgers. Track commitments on a wall calendar or shared dashboard. Crossing a line through each fulfilled promise gives the nervous system tactile proof that progress is real. Miss a square? Mark it in a different color, correct course, and keep going. Shame thrives in secrecy. Accountability dissolves it. 4. Selective friction. Introduce small chosen difficulties, cold showers, early runs, weekly budget reviews. These voluntary stresses teach the body-mind that discomfort is survivable. When unforeseen challenges arrive, the reflex to flee weakens. Practiced resilience steps forward. 5. Roots and wings. Agreement allocates specific hours for exploratory play, sketching new ideas, spontaneous travel, brainstorming future projects. Outside that window, return to current obligations. By scheduling flight, you grant it legitimacy without letting it hijack the itinerary. Over months, the landscape changes. Money arrives on time because invoices go out on time. Partnerships deepen because communication is steady. Creative projects, once abandoned at the midpoint, cross finish lines and enter the world to be judged on their merits. Some succeed, others stall. But the verdict no longer defines your worth. It simply informs your next iteration. A curious paradox emerges. The narrower your focus, the wider your reach. People trust what you finish, not what you fantasize, so opportunities multiply. The very freedom the puer chased through endless restarts now blossoms from discipline. The freedom to choose meaningful risks instead of scrambling to repair avoidable crises. None of this erases setbacks. Relapse into old patterns will tempt you during fatigue, heartbreak, or success that arrives faster than self-knowledge. When it happens, pause, name the slip, reopen the calendar, resume the anchors. Progress is a spiral, not a straight path. The measure is shorter detours, not the absence of them. If you are the caregiver who once cushioned every fall, your work is different but parallel. Hold boundaries with compassion, not contempt. Celebrate concrete steps rather than grand declarations. Remember that letting another person encounter consequences is an act of respect, an acknowledgement that they too can learn to steer their vessel through real weather. And if you recognize fragments of the eternal youth in your own reflection, know this: the boy inside is not your enemy. He's a wellspring of vision, curiosity, and wonder. The task is to seat him as advisor, not pilot. Let the adult navigate while the child points out constellations along the route. In that alliance, destiny shifts from mirage to map. Take a breath now. Feel the weight of unfinished dreams setting gently onto the ground. No longer heavy, just ready. Ahead lies the quiet exhilaration of building something that endures. One brick, one page, one honest conversation at a time. The sun is fully up. Daylight invites work, and work, tended with patience, invites harvest. If this reflection struck a chord, share it with someone who lingers on the threshold between promise and action. Talk together about one anchor you will each set tomorrow. Then do it. Small steps, repeated, redraw entire horizons. Your story does not end at almost. Land the plane, walk the earth. The sky will still be there, this time as a view, not an escape.